let's recap our sine rule, something we've seen before. There's just a basic triangle, ABC. Remember the normal way we name triangles, the vertices have the capital letters, and then the opposite side has the corresponding lowercase letter. That's usually the standard way of naming triangles. What I'm going to do is drop down a perpendicular, and we'll call that H for perpendicular height. Now, if I look at one of my triangles, I can say that H over C is the sine of B. So the perpendicular height is C sine B. However, if I look at the other right angle triangle, I can say H over B is the sine of C. So H is B sine C, but H is the same. Therefore, C sine B is equal to B sine C. Rearranging that, we get C over sine C is B over sine B. Now, because I just randomly picked two of them, I could easily have drawn the perpendicular height from another vertex, and I would have got A over sine A. So our sine rule in any triangle, A over sine A is B over sine B, is C over sine C. That ratio will be consistent. So let's do a typical sort of an example here. It doesn't matter what the letters are. I've got H, Q and L. Now it's H that I want to find, so I'm going to go H over sine H, and then I'll look for the information that I've got. Q over sine Q. Let's substitute in what we've got. So sine 57.46, and that's going to equal 37.2 over sine 43.26. Make H the subject. From there, of course, it's just calculator work, so punch in the buttons. And I've done mine to 1 decimal place. Usually in a question, if they don't tell me how accurate to do it, I'll match the accuracy of the question. So this question's 1 decimal place, so I'm going to do it to 1 decimal place. All right, let's do one when we're finding the angle. So when we're finding the angle, it's easier probably to flip the sine rule and have the sines on top. That's y that I want to find, so I'll have sine y over y is sine z over z. Substitute in, rearrange this one. So there's my fraction to find sine y. Of course, we'll put that into our calculator, bang, we'll get an answer, but that answer's for sine y. We want to find the angle, so then depending on your calculator, second function or inverse or whichever one it was to find the angle. And I've done mine to the nearest minute, so 46 degrees 58. Be careful when you're using the sine rule. Does your answer make sense? Because remember, your calculator will always give you an acute angle for these questions. But we've seen that sine is also positive in the second quadrant. So if the answer happens to be an obtuse angle, your calculator can't tell the difference. So things to look out for. Well, we know an angle sum of a triangle is 180 degrees. That might help us work out what the answer should be. But other things like this. If the answer is obtuse, it's going to be the biggest angle in the triangle. And you can't have more than one obtuse angle in a triangle. Biggest angle will always be opposite the biggest side. That's another thing you can keep an eye on to see whether it's possible for that to be an obtuse angle or not. Here's the actual sine rule. Not sure if you're aware of this or not. So here's the triangle ABC. It's possible to draw a circle, what we call the Circum Circle, right? Because circum meaning around. That's why we call it a circumference of a circle. So the circle that goes through all three vertices is the Circum Circle. It actually turns out that that consistent ratio will always equal the diameter of that circle. So that actually is the sine rule, that additional bit, that it actually equals the diameter. Now, when do you use that? Not very often, but it's an interesting fact. Area of a triangle also involves the sine ratio. Drop the perpendicular down again, and so there's H. Well, I know the area of a triangle, half base times height. So I know for this triangle, it's a half of A times H. But remember, we said we could write H as B sine C. Sub that in, and we get a half AB sine C. Again, I just randomly picked a vertex for that perpendicular to go through, but it could have just as easily have been half BC sine A, half AC sine B. Basically, it's any two sides and the included angle. So you've got two sides, the angle between them is the one you need. We'll do this as an example then. So for my one, the area is going to be a half dm sine f. Sub in, calculator work, and there's our answer. And I've done mine to 2 decimal places. So 25.47. So there's the recap of the sine rule.